And good evening once again, everyone. TSibs with you. It is Ask LG with LG McDonald, League Gaming Commissioner and all-around good guy. Here to talk about everything going on, how Season 4 ended up, what we learned from it, what's going on with Season 5, and we'll answer any of your questions. If you have any, hit us up in the shout box in the AHL if you can. Easiest for me to get you there. Also, you can do this on good evening once again, everyone. T-Sibs with you. It is on the, I'm sorry about that, on the live chat for YouTube, and we'll get to your questions there if you have them. Meanwhile, we'll bring in LG McDonald. Brody, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well, man. How are things going with you?
Pretty good. It's been a busy day. We've already done a 2-hour AHL wrap-up show, so it's already been a long day of LG. But it's this show I like because there's always a ton of speculation, and this week has been no different than any other week in the in the world of LG. A lot of people saying rule changes. This is happening. I've been banned for no reason, all sorts of fun things that happen. And it's always fun to get you on here and kind of do a reset of what's going on with League Gaming and what you guys are thinking coming up for the future. And Season 4, certainly a lot of re-signs on the PSN side and a lot of participants. We had a tremendous amount of training camp roster players and a lot of folks playing down in the CHL, and I believe that's probably the biggest CHL turnout we've had so far in the 4 seasons, and we expect to have a good deal more coming in Season 5. How do you feel as far as the participation was in Season 4 on the PSN side?
Oh, man, the sign-up numbers were crazy. It was definitely an eye-opener to be able to see us crack that the 3,000 player mark, which is pretty impressive. Definitely puts pressure on us, though, moving into Season 5. The idea is obviously to bring in as many CHL owners as possible, allowing us to expand that league as big as we possibly can to accommodate the players that we have. Obviously, I think right now we had 35 teams last season, 34 teams last season. So we're trying to retain hopefully 30 of them. And with the 58 or 60 applications we currently have for Season 5. I'm looking forward to, hopefully we can bring in another additional 30, and we can go from there.
And we're kind of expecting that there is going to be a nice turnout for CHL. Do we have 60 confirmed teams, or are we still working on that at this point?
We're still busting away at that right now. I know John and Haji are definitely going to be a big assets over this next week and a bit to make sure that we can get to that number. But it looks like it's going to be possible. And the biggest thing that people are kind of concerned about is, the sign-up numbers right now don't support that level of CHL. But at the same time, what we've always really done is having the prospect players that are only eligible to play in the CHL does allow the CHL to expand quite rapidly. So if we bring in 30 new owners and say, each of them have 10 or 12 friends that are playing, they could bring those 10 or 12 players to LG, the prospect players, brand new signups, which also boosts our numbers drastically to allow us to maintain a 60-team CHL. We've done 3 seasons on Xbox where we've had a complete 60 team in the CHL with the same principle or same idea is that we're going to give you guys a squad. It's your responsibility to go out and scout to make sure that you can bring in these new talents. And then if you can't maintain that number, we're gonna have to cut teams. That alone is enough motivation to see the CHL on Xbox over the last 3 seasons be well over 2,000 players. So I'm looking forward to be able to continue doing that and hopefully bring that to the PlayStation side as soon as this season.
So, we had a lot of good play in Season 4, a lot of good competition. AHL, I think what a lot of folks probably have realized, and again, I'm not following the NHL too much, but I got to imagine the talent level is about where you figured it would be. AHL, it was pretty evident that the parity amongst teams was a lot greater in Season 4 than we'd seen before, and obviously, more players are signing up, more players are becoming eligible for bidding in Season 4, and so we saw an influx of a lot of good players and not many teams that really faltered a good deal during the season. And that showed up in the playoff race. That showed up in all the postseason action. We may have seen, I think, the best overall playoff action that we've seen so far in the AHL. This is, I got to believe, pretty much what you saw when Xbox started up. There is a leveling of the playing field, and the influx of talent comes in, and then you find not just the NHL is got top talent, but the AHL and even the CHL have guys down there that could play up higher in one or even two divisions than they are right now. It just seems like there's so much talent, and there's so many more of these CHL guys now that are going to be eligible for bidding in the AHL. I got to believe season after season, this is just going to get more and more competitive up in the AHL.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Over the last 10 seasons on Xbox, having like a 3-tiered system that we've had, you definitely see new people come every season. Just the odd time you'll see a guy come in, totally dominate the CHL, and then the next season, he's like in the NHL as a draft pick or a drafted player, and works his way to management. We definitely see a lot of that along the way. But most people don't realize, and I didn't even really realize this until I asked EA. There's approximately like 190 to 195,000 ESHL players per console. So if you look at our sign-up numbers at 3,000, like we've only such a small portion of what's actually out there. Sixes hockey definitely needs to be bigger than what it actually is. There's definitely a lot of small like 2s and 3s and 4s clubs out there that have talented players on them that if people go out and recruit them and bring them to LG, we'll definitely be able to bring in some new talent. We're pretty lucky and pretty blessed that if you look at the top 10 or 20 Sixes teams on the Sixes leaderboards, we tend to have all of those players and all of that talent on both consoles currently playing here at LG. But there's definitely players out there that are new to the game, maybe the last couple seasons or maybe the last couple games, that are still out there looking and have no idea that we even exist. So to be able to say that we're at the top talent that we currently could be at, I think is a little bit naive, and we definitely there's tons of potential to bring new players in, and obviously how competitive the CHL can be at times, and seeing how the CHL the standings and the stats and how players go, there's definitely some new people out there. There was a guy in the Xbox League, a little bit different rules in regards to prospect status. On the PlayStation side of things, it's 15 games when they can graduate to amateur. On the Xbox side of things, it's 48, which is roughly 2 seasons. The reason why the difference is because it gives the CHL 2 seasons with a player to develop them, which also allows us to bring in stable management throughout. Obviously, if a player gets drafted prior to those 48 games, then they're eligible to move on. But if they don't, they maintain at that CHL level. It's definitely something we're going to look to see in the CHL and PSN in the future. But what I was getting to was there was a player in the CHL he was like 57-0. So like he literally hasn't lost on the Xbox side in like 2.5 seasons. His team's gone pretty deep in the playoffs. And he's definitely been a big part of that. So it'll be interesting to see players like that at that level. And I think he's playing the same line too. Like it's pretty sure it's 3 buddies that came in, and they're all the same, like 57-0 or 56-0. So it'll be pretty cool to see once they're drafted, how quickly they move up and where they stack in at, perhaps at the NHL level compared against everyone else.
In season 4, as season 4 was ending, certainly guys are talking about what their plans are for the summer season, which is what pretty much people refer to it as. And obviously there are guys who may not have the availability and don't sign up, but there have been pretty good numbers so far. Where we are right now with sign up for PSN is that about what you expect, or are we a little concerned about the numbers at this point? How does this typically go for this time of the year on Xbox side as well, quite honestly?
Right now it's pretty good, sitting 15-16 or 17-83 on Xbox. So we're sitting pretty good. That's enough for bidding because, those numbers, the way it works is players that are under contract on rosters, they technically don't have to sign up because they're under contract for a year. Right. So those numbers that you're actually seeing don't include people like myself. I'm under contract for next season. So like I don't have to click the sign up button because I'm already going to be on a roster. So those numbers potentially are people that are brand new signups or new, not brand new, but are people that are signed up for the season on top of whoever's going to be on the rosters, right? So we're sitting pretty good. The other thing to keep in mind too is it's more so on the Xbox side than on the PlayStation side, but there are still players on the Xbox side that prefer the AHL game times or the CHL game times over the NHL game times. So as bidding sessions begin, we do see a spike in numbers. So once NHL bidding goes live, anyone who signs up at that time becomes eligible for AHL bidding. So usually we see between 200 to 300 additional signups like within the first hour NHL bidding goes live. So that bumps those numbers up quite drastically for AHL bidding, and we see a little bit of that on the CHL side of things too in regards to CHL bidding. Sometimes you just have players that know where their talent lies and they feel more comfortable being in a lower tier. So other times we just have the game times being as spaced out as they are. We may see people that are just more comfortable playing in those different levels at those different times. So that bidding session may be more appealing to them than other ones. So yeah, right now I think we're sitting pretty good. We're 8 days away, or roughly a week away. And like I said, we'll see that number drastically increase once we start putting the CHL owners in place and start telling them that if they don't start recruiting and don't start bringing in new prospect players for them to be able to bid on, then we'll have to cut some teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if CHL bidding's on the 23rd of May. Yeah, 23rd. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if we're over 2,200 players by then.
Season 4. Again, towards the end, there were a lot of guys from management who, for one reason or another, were not looking to come back to manage again. I don't know what the turnover numbers are necessarily from season to season, but do we feel like there's any lack of management folks who we kind of want in those positions? Are we concerned about leadership in the league in general and on the PlayStation side, or do we feel like there's enough prospects coming up? There are enough guys who played in the CHL last season that can certainly be candidates moving forward?
I think that we're still in a pretty good honeymoon phase with the PlayStation League, to the sense that we're still getting pretty incredible sign-up numbers for these positions, which is extremely good. Obviously, the owner selections this season, we had a pretty good number of returning owners. I think out of a possible 30 owners, don't quote me, but I want to say I think 16 or 17 were returning when we brought in 12 additional new people. Some of them were already management, others were just talented players that we felt it was time to give an opportunity to. So we definitely have the numbers that are required. At the CHL level, like I said, having 34 teams last season was pretty big. It's a pretty good step forward. But then on top of those 34 potential returning owners, which I think we may be able to lock in with 25 to 30 of them, we got an additional roughly 60 applications, which is huge.
Wow.
So that gives us potentially 90 people to look at to fill 60 teams. So I think that there's definitely something to consider. That thread alone for the CHL owner applications has 4,600 views on that one thread.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy how much. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity, a lot of things going on. So we'll definitely see how it goes and hopefully play it by ear.
And so season 5, obviously, like you said, around the corner. There's been a lot of talk about a few different things. I want to get to the one thing that really wound up being a bigger issue this past week, and that was a lot of discussion about the no management list and that coming out, and some guys who quite a few guys who believed that they were about ready to step into some kind of management role, finding themselves on the list. Certainly a lot of anger from those folks in the shout box. Couple of questions towards this. I think what maybe a lot of people are concerned about is maybe the criteria for it and what lands somebody on there. So I guess the best place to start is, what is criteria to say someone is a successful manager or can be, someone who doesn't have experience as a manager in this league? What could make them someone that is acceptable and a candidate for it? We'll start there, and then we could talk about what are some of the things that some folks have done that makes them ineligible. But first, let's talk about what you're looking for when you're trying to find management.
So the cool thing is, it's one thing that people may or may not agree with, but this league is built around competitive sixes hockey. One of the biggest reasons why LG has got to where it's gotten is the simple fact that people want to play hockey, but they want to have a reason why they're buying NHL every year. It's kind of neat. I've sat at the table and with actual EA Sports and talked about the direction of their game over the next couple of years. I've been on talks for NHL 20 as an example, but just as what I'm saying is, LG gives people a reason to play, and it's become one of the most competitive leagues, or the most competitive league out there. So the number one thing is, people are drawn to winners and people are drawn to talented players. So if you're really skilled at the game and you're a skilled player, you tend to attract other skilled players who want to play with you and want to win with you. That being said, those players don't always make the best managers, but that's in some direction where we have to start when we look at different tiers. Obviously, if we could take the 30 best players on the PlayStation side and give them each a team on the PlayStation side, it would probably turn into being one of the best or most competitive seasons we've ever had. So that's definitely, button skill has to be considered, just because other players with talent are drawn to people who have talent, and that's one biggest thing. But the way you treat people is another big part of it. I've played on teams where the owner is considered maybe the third line center, or the number 6 defenseman, or the backup goalie, or whatever it may be. But was able to go out, listen to his teammates, pick up some assets. It's like, your best right winger says, hey man, like I play club with this guy, like he's really, really good centerman, like we're really good friends, we work well together. And then so that owner goes out, makes a trade to acquire that other player's buddy, keeps them happy, but also builds chemistry on that team. So I definitely think that how you handle your players is a big, big part of it. One of the biggest pieces of advice I could give other people too, is who are new to it, is like not to come in with the expectation that you're going to be able to build Rome overnight. Like, some people try to bite off more than they can chew, and try to pick up a ton of assets and a ton of people, and they tend to get in over their head sometimes. And it's a slower process if you work on like little successes along the way until you can build some recognition and people know who you are, and you become a household name, and still people want to play for you. That's another big part of it. The other thing that we're starting to see that's pretty neat and pretty cool at the CHL level is we've been able to bring in, on the Xbox side anyways, we've been able to bring in some players that are like known streamers. So may not be a super crazy skilled player, but this guy's has 1,000 followers on Twitch and streams all of his games. Is a pretty good personality, and people are drawn to those type of people, and they tend to be really good leaders. And the biggest thing is people have to buy into the system. At the end of the day, it's like, this is what we're trying to accomplish. These are the goals, and these are the rules, and this is what we're going to do to create this kind of cool environment that we have. So we need people that can buy in and believe in the direction that we're going. And that's a big part of it.
So some of the issues that came up this week, or actually it's more about individuals who wound up on this list, again, without, we don't want to name names in specific situations, but what are the types of things that you're coming across that wind up forcing you to put some of these folks on this list and sit them out for a season, maybe two, if needed?
The first and foremost is like, if you stop and think about what management actually means and what opportunities it creates, people take that for granted. It's a free position that you get to pick where you're going. You get to pick who your partner is. You get to pick the jerseys you're playing on. You get to pick everything. Mm-hmm. The owner you're working with, which is something that players don't get to do. Like you don't get to pick and choose. But if you're as a manager, you get that opportunity. You also get the opportunity to build the team, which is a pretty cool thing. Like we're essentially playing GM connected, or be a GM mode with real people in the real life is what LG basically is. Right. To give you those opportunities to have to play at that level and build those teams and have fun with it. Management is quite a privilege to have. With that being said, everyone realizes that too. You got a different color name on the website. Might not seem like much, but it means something. People stand out on the website. So the things that you kind of keep in mind is like conduct issues are huge. Our management are supposed to be leaders as anywhere possible. So anytime that something's posted on the website and they're going to give a comment, or they're going to help someone else, or someone has a question in the chat box, or whatever it may be, like people that have different color names, whether they want to admit it or not, have an obligation to be leaders in this community. Like as soon as you become staff, as soon as you become a manager, as soon as you become whatever you may be, and your name is no longer a regular color name, or it's not changed because you purchased something, like you're automatically a leader in this community, and people look to that. So we've seen issues, like there was a couple issues where a couple guys have been pretty irate about conduct issues at like 3 o'clock in the morning. They're talented people, they were good managers, and they went off the handle late at night. So you know what that leads to? Us not having trust in your ability to represent the league. Anytime you're a manager, you're directly representing me specifically. So when I see things like that, or we talk about things like that, it's not acceptable. We're here to have a good time and be professional and build on things, especially as we look at future opportunities. We look at things like expanding our esports league for hockey and soccer on both consoles. Like we need people to to understand that there's a lot of work going in behind the scenes that people don't know about, that it's going on to take this to the next level. And if we can continue to be on good behavior and have a professional looking website and be professional as much as possible, good things are going to come. And this is only going to get better and better and better for everyone here that really wants this to be something more.
Can you give us a quick overview, a little bit of what the process is that you go through when you've got someone that you that is first of all up for question about whether or not they should be in management, and it could be from an incident, it could be just from a history that this person has had. What typically leads to someone being reviewed for management? Is it just complaints? Is it an overall history? I mean, is it a combination of different things? What gets you to the point where you've got to look at someone and say, okay, we got to talk about this person and decide whether or not they still deserve to be in management because X has happened and we need to find out more and figure it out?
There's a ton of stuff that can go into it, right? Like obviously the way people interact with staff is a big part of it. If you want to come into private chats and get personal and go nuts the whole season long, cause headaches, play in a gray area, be shady all season, and hide behind the rule book saying, oh, that's not really a rule, or whatever it may be. Like, those are things to consider. Like, is it really worth my time or my staff's time that we volunteer and donate to constantly handle stupid issues that people create for, to troll or whatever at management roles? I personally don't think so. Then there's other sides of things too. Like we said, management is a privilege. So if it's a privilege, there's certain expectations of people need to be active in certain roles, and we're not asking for miracles. And the way LG set up is management is no longer as much of a chore as it was for those who remember what it was like on VHL when we had a different website that wasn't nearly as active as it is here. Obviously, complaints are another portion of it. So if people have issues, they come to us, we talk about it, we look at it, we address it. And you got to keep in mind, staff play in this league. Like, we're on teams. Most of us are on all different teams. So we hear and see a lot of things that people may forget that we hear and see. So there's a lot of different factors come into it. Every person that's on that list obviously is there for different or unique reasons. And most people that are on the list are there, and they're not there forever per se, right? So right. It's just all about how they handle themselves and handle taking the news, which obviously some people haven't taken very well. And at the end of the day, like, everyone's got different roles here in LG. Players have a role to play. Managers have a role to manage and be leaders, and staff have a role to govern the league. It's a free-to-play website. No one's forcing you to be here. No one's forcing anyone to be a part of this. So we're just here to make rules and do what we feel is best for the league and best for everyone in general, and kind of move forward and continue to move the league in the direction that we feel is possible and is the right direction.
I want to go down, and that's a good lean in. I want to go down the avenue of rules, and I want to talk about. We will talk about some of the changes that are coming up for Season 5, and I think it's important that that we try to address those and get some detail in it. I do want to address one thing, and we've had a couple of instances this season where rules were in question. There was obviously someone from the BOG gets involved when that happens, and there have been a couple of times where rules have had to be read and reread and maybe even consulted on about the interpretation of it. And we've had an instance or two where maybe it was questionable whether or not the right decision was made. And it could all be, and a lot of it had to do with maybe wording of it, and that's certainly a familiarity that the PSN side doesn't have compared to Xbox. But I wanted to pose the question this way, or at least the thought process, and obviously everyone wants to yell, "Hey, rewrite the rules." That's not the answer, but the question I have is, I'm kind of looking at this as a software test engineer viewpoint. In that the folks on the Xbox side are the ones who wrote it, who have been living it for a long time, and who have a really good grasp of this because they've been doing it for a long time. And I'm wondering if those of us on PSN who are getting familiar with the book, with the rule book, season after season, if not maybe We're coming at it with a different viewpoint, with a fresh set of eyes, and that maybe it's time to at least look at them again and say, okay, maybe because we know this rule so well, it makes sense to us. Maybe it doesn't make quite enough sense on the PSN side. Has there been any talk about maybe we need to fill these out a little more and to give a little more detail, maybe a little bit better wording, so that those of us playing on the PSN side have a chance to understand the rules a little bit better?
100%. So I like everything you said. I agree with 100%. It's unfortunate. There's been a handful of incidents where the interpretation of the rules were just simply not there, and the rules were written and take full advantage of the fact that that people understood them because they've been around for so long. Mm-hmm. They never were looked at with the set of eyes that the PlayStation League looks at, unfortunately, which has led to some issues. What we've done is we've assigned some of the pretty keen BOG to kind of go through the rule book, and anything that comes up that kind of spikes something in their mind that says, I'm not sure if this means this or means this, they've kind of made a thread about it and made a post about it. And starting probably tomorrow morning or this week, I have some time off. I'm going to be going through all of their comments and all of their stuff, and then all those parts that say, I don't know if it means this or if it means that, I'll go in and I'll make sure that it's very clear that it's left, not right. Because there has, like you said, 100%, man, it's been really unfortunate to see us transition with this incredible set of rules and guidance and procedures and the Constitution that we have, but having some small areas that are miscommunicated for sure. So we definitely are going to go over the rules as best as possible to ensure that we can eliminate as much of this uncertainty as possible, because it's not the intent. Like, there is no intent. There's no hidden questions. I'm not looking to fuck anyone over. Like, it's literally, these rules work. Like, they're proven that they work. We just have to figure out a way to ensure that we're all on the same page and we're all understanding. We all know what's going on. I've even tried my best to engage as much as possible with the NHL and AHL management on the PlayStation side in regards to suggestions for rule changes and stuff. And it's been kind of unfortunate to see how lackadaisy and the lack of communication there has been between both sides. For almost a week with the owners and stuff, it was literally like a one-on-one conversation publicly between me, myself, and two other owners. No one else really stepped up to comments, which is unfortunate. But as we continue to encourage and talk and really look at everyone's ideas, we're really hoping to clear up as much of this as possible and really just keep things simple, but keep things so it's very obvious that there's no other interpretation for some rules. And it's a daunting task at times, man. Like, it's our rules are huge, and there's a lot of rules that are there to prevent teams from doing this or this or this. It's kind of like the post. I put a post out yesterday to both the NHL and AHL management across both consoles, and it kind of gave a breakdown of okay, these are 4 or 5 changes that are coming, and these are the reasons why they're coming, because these are things that have happened before. Therefore, we need a rule to prevent that from happening again. So I'm trying my best to kind of give everyone a full understanding of this is why we're changing this is the reason why, what we've seen in the past, this is what we're trying to prevent. And in the end, I'm coming back to try to protect you as a manager from falling into one of these situations or being a victim of this or having a player that takes advantage of that or whatever it may be, right? So one really, really, really good example that kind of came up this season is, and it's come up a couple times, is anyone who's in the CHL, on a CHL roster right now, listed as a prospect. They're all heading to the draft coming up in next week, okay? Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of those players that want to become NHL and AHL managers, and that we keep getting the same questions like, "Hey man, I have the required games. I'm going to be an amateur. I want to be an NHL manager. I want to be an AHL GM. Blah blah blah." And some other managers, some other owners are saying, well, "Why can't I take this player he's going to be an amateur anyways?" And what the bigger picture is, and people don't realize, is we prevent players that are going to the draft from taking these management positions prior to the draft, so we don't water down the draft class. Right. So if you look at it from the bigger lens, the number 1 pick overall, let's say he's best friends with an NHL owner. Let's say now this guy wants to go be an AHL GM. If we take him out of the draft and let him go be an AHL manager for free for someone else, and let's say this guy's been the best player for the whole season, and since about week 3, everyone's known that if I get the first overall pick in the NHL, that's the guy I'm going to get.
Right.
If we pull that guy out of the draft class and let him be a manager, we have just completely undermined all the value of all those trades and all those draft picks from the entire season prior.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that like really pisses owners off. And it also, like, when you think about it, you actually stop and think about it, it's really fair that we handle it the way we handle it, because there's no other way for us to ensure that that entire season of trading wasn't for nothing.
Right, and that's, I mean, if we're trying, obviously LG in general is trying to, we're trying to give that same kind of experience, the one that everyone's used to seeing, that they've been watching in the NHL all these years. You want to see these young players who have just started out in the CHL get a crack at the draft and give those teams a chance to get really good players on there. And that's the one opportunity where they can draft somebody who is a solid talent and who is being rewarded by being high in the draft. First of all, given the opportunity to be in the draft because they committed to playing for a season of being a prospect, and then giving the teams in the NHL an opportunity to get this kind of talent on their team, where if they're a top draft pick, they had some difficulties last year. They could use the talent, and so here's the chance where they can possibly pick up one or two good solid draft picks who could help them out. So it lends to that experience for the management, but it's all the same thing that we're all used to seeing in professional sports, and there's excitement to that. When you take it out, like you say, what's the point of even looking at what's going on with the draft at that point if you're taking out some of the top players?
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I'm trying to figure out a better way to like communicate all this stuff, and I've kind of thought about maybe if I put together like some flowcharts and like post them publicly so people can kind of see the direction things are going and why things are the way they are. But it all makes sense, right? We're using this draft to add new faces, new talent to the NHL, to those teams that potentially didn't have successful seasons. They get these players at a discounted price for up to 2 seasons. At the end of those 2 seasons, those players go to RFA, where that team gets the opportunity to perhaps retain this player for a 3rd year, maybe at a more of a value, like a market fair value, because of how RFA bidding works. But potentially we're just allowing teams to build through the draft more readily than they could prior to bidding with how the contract system works. And that also promotes the whole system, right? Like that encourages new people to come here. That encourages more people to try harder than CHL. That encourages top talent to move up the chain. Like it's that constant flow upward to revitalize the league and keep everything fresh. And it's kind of what we need. We're at a point too, like I think that on the Xbox side anyways, I could probably take, there's one CHL owner that comes to mind. He's like really popular, really well known, had an excellent team. I could probably take him, move him directly to the NHL, and if he had moved to a team that had potentially 5 or 6 draft picks, and he was able to acquire other draft picks, I think he could probably pick up 5 or 6 or 7 drafted players that people don't really know, and then automatically become competitive at that NHL level almost immediately, just based on how the tier is. And in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's what really benefits the league, to allow these people to move up. Now, the systems and the tiers have always been set up to allow the best players to play at the highest tier, the easiest, right? So you could have a CHL player, he plays 3 games, gets drafted first overall, plays in the NHL. Where you could have a player that plays, potentially down the road, we could have a CHL player on the PlayStation side who plays 48 games before he becomes NHL eligible, just because he's never went drafted, right? Though that 48 game window also gives a player 2 opportunities to go to the entry draft. So maybe your first year you don't make it, your second year you have a good time and you get drafted, right? So it's all about opportunity and making the draft have value, and then also using the RFA system and to give those draft people a second chance at being revalued and keep them in the marketplace to kind of keep bidding and everything balanced. It's all about balance, is what
right.
It's help these teams to make this as competitive as possible.
And again, we'll get to some of the rule changes coming up, but there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about, which was this past season prospects, and plenty of them on the TC roster for the AHL teams, and certainly they could be used as ECUs during the season, but during the playoffs, most rosters had almost all prospects, maybe a couple of vets or amateurs. Was that? I mean, do you still feel like that was a good call because it just limited some teams during the playoffs? Is that something you already had experience on the Xbox side and it worked out okay, or could we have possibly, I don't know, maybe designated a couple of prospects per team, just so I know there were a couple of teams that either didn't have a goalie that wasn't a prospect or whatever other position. I mean, obviously, this is an early time in the PSN side, but how did you feel that worked out this season with the TC rosters?
There's a lot of things you have to keep in mind. One, the best teams in the league aren't going to need ECUs. They're going to be active. They're going to build their team around availability. Their players are going to show up to play. So when it comes to the playoffs, they're not going to need ECUs. And that's the bottom line. Is teams need to stop building and placing blind bids and building teams around names and people they think are going to be good. No, scouting has to mean something. You need to go out, talk to people, get people with good availability, and build your team around that, and stop relying so heavily on the fact that, oh, well, I'll just bid on this guy. Who cares? I've got 100 training camp players to use. The other thing to keep in mind that people have to realize is the easiest way to sneak a second account into the league is through a prospect tag. It's the easy way to do it. You create a brand new account. You're a brand new player. You get randomly assigned. You trade for that asset. There you go. No one knows who it is. So now, everyone knowing that, do we want those players eligible in the playoffs where they can make a major difference? Like, my answer is no. Like, there's no way we should allow that to be a possibility, and teams should just prepare for it better. Like, the rule was posted at the beginning of the season that prospects were not eligible for the playoffs. Right. It was right at the very beginning, and I put it out as an alert to both sets of management. It was posted in the management office, and almost every manager, I'm positive, got the PM for me, and it said in there right from the beginning, prior to bidding, they got that saying they're not eligible for bidding. So the teams don't have excuses why they weren't prepared. And to be honest, it's going to get more strict as the seasons progress. Like, one example is randomly assigned veteran players. AHL rosters were allowed to have one of them last season. Their active roster, it's going to none this season. 0. No, because we've already heard talk and already heard rumors of $6-7 million NHL players are just going to sign up late, get randomly assigned, and play in the AHL this season. We've already heard teams talking about that. We've already heard players talking about that. We've already got a glimpse of that. So guess what? They're not going to be eligible to play anywhere but the CHL. Yes, they can ECU, but that's it. And if it's even so strict that on the Xbox side of things, randomly assigned veterans can ECU but can't during the playoffs. They can't be called up. So literally the AHL on the Xbox side is only allowed to use veterans, amateurs, so who have already passed through the bidding session, so they're not randomly assigned. That's pretty much it. They're limited to – most rosters had 8 to 10 last season they were able to use in the playoffs. So it comes down to build your team through bidding. And don't take advantage of the random assignment system and discounted contracts, so on and so forth. We've looked at some ideas to potentially changing the random assigned system so that when a player gets randomly assigned, their salary is based off of an average of what their last 3 contracts were. The issue becomes obviously if those contracts were zero valid contracts, well then we have to decide how's that going to play a factor into it. But we have been looking at and considering a system where they won't be assigned 500K anymore. They'll be assigned an average of what their last 3 contracts were, giving us the possibility to remove the restrictions, because now you're not going to have a $7 million player on your TC at 500K that you can call up and take advantage of.
Right.
But as it goes right now, there's going to be more restrictions added to the training camp players that are eligible to play. And it's unfortunate it has to come to that, but teams take advantage of it and they abuse it, and it leads to things like this.
Yeah, I think the abuse of it is something that as a season as a league goes on, and now we're heading to season 5. I'm assuming we're just going to see more and more of this go on, and unfortunately, you guys have to put in safeguards because there are people who are always trying to game the game. But I think you get a lot of feedback like, oh, all these rules and there's so much going on. Well, it's because there are guys who want to skirt the system. That's always going to be the case, and it's an ungodly task for you guys to have to consider all this season after season. And With that in mind, let's start talking about Season 5 and some of the rule changes. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, and certainly I'll let you jump right in, but you were talking more towards the idea of having a rule system that's more tiered towards the leagues. You want to talk about what you mean by that?
Yeah, for sure. So there's going to be some adjustments to the rules that allow for the most amount of flexibility, obviously, at the NHL level. This makes it so it's the most appealing level to manage at, and it makes it so people still have something to strive towards. I have nothing against people who want to maintain a career at the AHL level, but at the same time, I don't want those people to expect to have the same flexibility and freedom that they would if they would have moved up to the NHL level. So one of the examples that we talked about prior to the show starting would be in regards to re-signs. So at the CHL level, there are no re-signs. Can't re-sign a player. There potentially will be. So on the Xbox side, we already added in like a contract system, which is once again plays in the same thing because it's not the same as the other contract system. But anyways, no re-signs in the CHL.
Mm-hmm.
Move up to the AHL level, each team gets 2 re-signs, but those re-signs you can't trade them. So what I mean by that is you can't trade a player to another team, have them re-sign and trade them back. That's
Gotcha.
what we're trying to avoid. And the reason why is that because that allows teams to literally stack their rosters and re-sign all of their free agent players, keep it maintaining a team from season to season to season, which waters down bidding, which causes issues, which is something that we wanted to avoid at the AHL level.
Sure.
The reason being is there tends to be more turnaround or turnover at the AHL level, so the trading of those valued assets doesn't seem to have the same value as it does at the NHL level. Jump up to the NHL tier. Same thing. Each team gets 2 re-signs with the ability to trade for an additional re-sign or trade players to be re-signed and have them traded back. Once again, we've seen that there's more. The NHL tends to be the most competitive environment, so we definitely see teams that are willing to not give those re-signs away for nothing, which we've seen at the AHL level. So that's a good example of how the rules are being tiered to make the NHL have the most flexibility and the most options, but also allow for the lower tiers to kind of get a taste of these systems as they work their way up the ranks.
And there are, obviously, like you said, for each individual season it comes up on the PSN side, you're going to have to make adjustments every season just because of the talent pool changing and leadership issues. Talk about some other things that you guys are considering for Season 5 or even Season 6 that you think might be an issue coming up.
Well, anyone who has an idea, who wants to know what the rules are going to look like in the future, look at the Xbox Constitution. Because what I'm doing is I'm slowly moving the PlayStation to be the exact same rules that the Xbox side is. There's definitely there will be always some minor adjustments, but ideally the restrictions that are in place on the Xbox side that have been there for 10 or 12 seasons is the direction we're moving the the PlayStation League to. So the goal is 60 CHL teams. After that, it'll be 60 CHL teams, giving them additional contract years. After that, the next step will be prospects go from 15 games to 48 games. Like the path has already been laid for the direction this league is going to head, and it's easy to see all of it because it's right on the Xbox side that's on the same website. The one thing I will say that it's almost positive it's going to happen and it's going to be likely to occur is I'm probably going to move the Thursday game in the NHL on the PlayStation side to Tuesday, but it's only going to be on the PlayStation League. We just kind of got some pretty unfortunate news, so this is kind of a breaking news for most people. But our guy that does all of our scheduling and stuff sat down, pieced together some ideas, and he's basically telling us it's near impossible to have a 31-team schedule, which means if we wanted to go that direction and add Vegas for Season 6, it's fucking near impossible, or it is impossible for us to have a 31-team schedule, which opens us up to leaving it at 30 teams or adding an additional 32nd team to make it work, which is something that we're hemming and hawing about because there currently isn't an actual 32nd team, so we don't really know what direction to go. So with that being said, though, we are looking heavily. We're going to move that Thursday game to Tuesday. Tuesday's one of the best days for availability. That's why we selected Tuesday. And then also it's summer season, so it kind of puts 3 games into one night where people can be available for, which I think could be a huge asset to the league in general. We'll give it a try, and we'll see if maybe that's something we want to continue with moving forward throughout the leagues.
So that's that's just a Season 5 test. It's not definite that it'll be that way moving forward.
To be honest, I wouldn't mind if we did it, if we left it like that. My reasoning would be then it opens up that Thursday slot for for ESHL or like our esports brand to have a whole day where we can kind of commit earlier game times to whatever schedule we're using. There's also some pretty cool stuff coming out maybe for the next NHL game that I think we could probably utilize on a separate day. So I just think that having it down to like the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't think is a bad thing. It also kind of gives you guys an additional day like off, right? It's a day off where you're not having to run a team, where you could do trades, do send downs, take a break.
Yeah.
So I'm not really opposed to having a 4-day week, as long as our players can show that they're able to dedicate, to those 4 days, which may be easier to do, for most people because it's a shorter time. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence right now. I think that the move will be pretty successful for the NHL this summer season, which is going to be to the point where we're going to have to consider it moving forward, and then which are also going to have to consider how we're going to adjust that for the AHL and CHL being half an hour game times. Now, obviously, at the AHL level, 8:30 is probably too early, and 11:30 tends to be probably too late. So we may look at something like maybe we move the the games to the 8:45, 9:45, 10:45 at the AHL level, perhaps, is one thing I've kind of thought of. But it's definitely something I think that could be beneficial to, I think, managers more than anyone. Gives them a quick break, more time to spend on the off season or on the between weeks. Also more time to trade and figure stuff out. So I don't know. I think it could be a really positive change that is something that we haven't really considered. And I know people hate change. We've been the same times for 12 years, so a change like this is can be drastic and shocking to some people, but I think it probably could be pretty beneficial to everyone if we give this a chance.
Now that you talked about the schedule and having that 31st team, so there's no permutation where there'd be an off-balance schedule for one team a week or anything like that. It just doesn't seem to work out numbers-wise.
Yeah, apparently it's impossible. Like I've even made suggestions like, well, let's add additional game time. So let's go we'll add. So let's just use the NHL because that's the level we look at first, right? We'll say that our game times are Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9, 10, 11. So that's 5 days, 3 slots, 15 time slots. So out of those 15 time slots, I need 31 teams to play 9 times. And it's like, okay, so we looked at that kind of stuff, and it sounds like it's doable, like when you say it like that, but from what our guys been looking at and trying to do, it sounds like it's just not possible at this current time. So if anyone's listening and they're a fucking wizard with schedules and you want to give it a shot, send me a message because I'll gladly sit down and tell you what I'm looking for, and we can see if it's possible.
Again, the upcoming season has a few changes going on, but there are a couple of other things that have come across from some questions from some people, and one of them that we discussed a little bit earlier today on the AHL show was the idea of some incentive or something to that we could do for the owners, GMs, the BOG, maybe even the media who are putting in their time and dedication. It's there's a lot of talk that we had today about the no management list and what we have to do to to punish people. What are some of the things that you guys are thinking of that can start looking towards the folks who are contributing to the site, who are contributing to the league, who are positive influences, who are taking leadership roles and doing them well? What types of things does LG have in mind to try and cultivate those people who are doing it now and try and find new ones who are willing to be a positive effect on this league?
I've reached out to EA recently in regards to potentially looking at getting copies of future games. What's the dollar signs associated with that? Blah blah blah. Like I know myself personally, when I'm at their head office and stuff, and I wanted to go to they have a store right in their head office. It's pretty cool actually. It's an arcade, but like any game title that's in there that I want to purchase, whether it be the actual hard copy of the game or the digital download code, cost me $10. So it's a pretty small expense. So
Right.
we have reached out to them and kind of looked at if there's a way we could come to an agreement or a partnership between us where I want 40 copies of the next game, maybe 20 PlayStation, 20 Xbox, and then we use those copies as kind of giveaways to those people, like you're saying, that have been dedicated to the league and have been dedicated to LG, been positive, been the people we want to do. Because I wish there was a better way for us to continue to reward people for just doing the right thing and being good people and volunteering their time. It's very difficult with the type of league that we have and the systems we have. Like like we said, we have staff members that have been dedicated here for 7 or 8 seasons that I'd like to be able to just give them a free copy of the game. We have media guys like you that are doing media shows like every week talking about things and keeping the leagues exciting. Like I'd love to be able to give you a copy of the next year's game and so on and so forth. Let that trickle down, and it also gives people something to work towards, because they want to be rewarded as well. So I have reached out in that sense to see if there's any possibilities, and maybe we can go from there. But it's hard to say. There's definitely some other things in the works for our esports hockey league stuff that maybe could bring more excitement and maybe potentially more revenue to LG, so we can look at other options. So from now, that's kind of a lot of it's ideas and the idea stage. So hopefully we can figure something out and to hopefully reward people like you said that definitely deserve that extra something, because they've just been such dedicated and role model people for the community.
And going back a little bit to management, one of the things that folks are talking about maybe is trying to get more of a longer commitment out of people in management. Again, we talked about that a little bit earlier about some of the turnover in the AHL. Is there anything or any thought to the idea of any kind of multi-season commitments from owners and managers, just because there is so much turnover? What are some of the possible solutions that you guys have thought about to combat that and try and keep some folks in those roles, especially the ones who are doing a great job at it?
2-season contracts were something we utilized in former leagues I've been a part of for management, and it seemed to work really well. The only kicker of it that does suck is I put an owner on a 2-season contract, and he quits between seasons. He's not eligible to play the next season.
Okay.
So that's how it's always been, right? So we keep people around. It's difficult at the AHL level as well too. Like I've said this over and over and over again, and I really want our AHL guys to listen and hear this. Is when it comes down to like picking a team, really talk to the owner, man. It's not just like, hey, you want my AHL team? Yeah, sure. And then and then don't talk for like another 6 weeks. Like sit down and talk to this owner and build a relationship. And because if that owner is good and he comes back and he's an owner for 4 or 5 seasons after that, and you guys have a strong relationship, you probably have locked yourself into that GM role for 4 or 5 seasons if you want it, right? So I think that managers have to do a better job amongst themselves to ensure that they're setting themselves up for success to to have longevity. But I definitely have considered 2-season contracts just to help out that type of stuff, because we still have we have a lot of returning guys. Like I said, this season we had like 15 or 16 returning guys. So let's say those guys were on 2-season deals last year. Well, there you go. That's 15 or 16 that are already returned now. The only way that we'd let people out of that contract, I think, would be if we came in and decided that their performance was subpar and they weren't doing what we wanted to do, we would remove them in between seasons and give them eligibility to play back. I don't think it's not really my style, or not really fair in my opinion, just to pull the pin on someone and say, yeah, you didn't do very well, so now you can't play next season either. I'd rather come in during the off season, clean slate, you're fired, here you go back to bidding, blah blah blah. But I have thought about it and stuff. We just have to figure out a way that we can implement it where we don't alienate too many people, but also benefit the league in so many ways.
And one of the last things I wanted to ask you about was the obviously Commissioner Bettman had his vision of esports several months back, and LG has already taken steps towards that. You want to give us a bit of an update on what what's been going on so far, and what you guys have in store for the future of esports hockey competition?
I don't know how to really say a lot of this. There's a lot of things in the works, like a lot of things in the works. There's for hockey and soccer on both sides. We've brainstormed a bajillion different ideas of how we can approach this, who we can approach, how we can get to them, and we're at a stage right now where we've come up with a couple plans, and then now we're looking to we're reaching out to the contacts that we have. But Triz and I both have contacts that are pretty deep in many different aspects that we're looking to hopefully utilize the best as we can to move this in the next direction and move it forward in so many different ways. I think that the way that the NBA is handling like their esports league is pretty epic. You look at it, it was like a $500,000 buy-in for NBA franchises to own an esports team, and then they're paying the players like 40 grand or something to play for them. Like it's pretty much LG at that whole level where it's like where you come in as an owner and you pay me $500,000 to own in this league, and then now you're going to pay your players 40 grand to play for you. Like it's pretty crazy to think that it's got to that level. Sky's the limit for what we can do. We're listening to Bettman talk and kind of throw EA under the bus a little bit in regards to how he wants hockey to be there as well. No one else does what we do. Like, yeah, there's other websites, but literally no one else does what we do. People can't keep up to us. They can't dedicate the time that we have. There's no one else that does what we are. So I think that's something that we're trying to take advantage of, is the fact that all the things that the real NHL wants and all the things that hockey can be for esports are things that we've been doing for 10 years. So we're putting packages together and putting feelers out to different companies, communities, teams, whatever it may be, to turn this into something more for what I feel our community deserves. I know we're the best hockey community out there, and I'm really busting my ass behind the scenes to make something come of this. And we came up with a pretty solid plan for hockey, and the plan sounded a little bit difficult to maneuver, but as we continue to tap into our resources and stuff, it's becoming a little bit more of a reality more and more. So I'm really hoping that we'll be able to do something sooner than possible and have some major announcements that we can let everyone know about like really soon, so we can really build hype and really show you guys that the dedication you put into LG for the past 14 years and it's really paying off. And I'm going to give you something more to play for one day, and that's what our goal is right now.
Well, we're gonna wrap this up, and I'll let you get out some last comments. And you hit upon a lot of the questions that most everybody had been asking, and certainly a lot of what's been going on in the league of late. Our buddy John over at Between the Pipes is asking a question that I think we've asked you before, and he wants it desperately asked again, which is how many whole pizzas do you eat during Game Changer meetings? Which I don't think is a legitimate question, but he finds it important to ask, so I'll ask anyway.
Oh my god, that fucking guy. That's pretty funny. Last time I was pretty good. I only think I ate about half a pizza. We kept it pretty minimal, so definitely trying to lose some weight. And John, thanks for your moral support.
Hey, quick, before you get the last word in, 1 or 2 lines. How do you describe what you know so far about 18?
So before I answer that question, I'm not a hater of 17. Obviously, I was part of the development process of it.
Sure.
I'm not naive. There's definitely shit in 17 that needs to get fixed. I'm pretty pissed off about how it's impossible to get into how some guys can't get into club challenge games, and it causes league games to start 20, 15 minutes late. I hate that. It drives me crazy. I've taken several videos and several complaints from LG, and I put it on the lap of the change request guys at EA to have this fixed for 18. So fingers crossed, that is one thing that I really, really hope that we can see addressed, so that gets fixed. There's definitely some gameplay stuff that needs to be tweaked. Goalies need some love because it sucks for them. But that being said, the stuff that I played for NHL 18 a couple months ago, I think maybe a month ago, was pretty incredible and pretty awesome. It was I kind of went in with an open mind, thinking okay, I'm really looking forward to seeing what these new proposed changes are going to play like. The other thing that I found pretty neat was the level of progression of where they were for this time for 18 compared to this time for 17. They seem to be, in my opinion, way more ahead now than they were last year, which gives me hope that there'll be more time spent on fixing some of the daunting issues that 17 will maybe have legacy to. So I am excited for what I've seen for early stages 18. I'm hoping that I'll be lucky enough to be selected to go back for beta testing on 18, probably sometime in June, beginning of June, end of May. So then by then we'll have some more information. I could probably sit down and maybe talk about it a little bit more once they actually announce the feature set and all that other stuff too. So I definitely think there's some exciting things coming for 18. So fingers crossed, and maybe we can get some stuff, some of our major issues addressed.
Have they given any idea about when they might put out a beta on that, or no? Too early?
Yeah, a little too early for that kind of stuff. They're not really sure, right? It's usually like you can pretty much timeline EA like right to the T for NHL, right? Like it's always the second Tuesday of September the game comes out, regardless of what date that is. The beta usually comes sometime near the middle of the end of summer, roughly a month or some out, and that type of stuff, right? So they haven't said anything. So like if, they may make an announcement next week and the beta is coming out in June, or they may make an announcement that they're not doing a beta. Like any of that stuff, I'm not really sure about, right? But pretty much they've been really consistent over the last like 5 or 6 years that things have been super consistent. So I think you could probably, if you're going to bet, you could probably bet that the timelines that you saw for NHL 17 in regards to beta, game launch, all that stuff would probably be almost identical for this game.
So finally, anything you want to leave the audience with leading into Season 5 here for PSN? What's your overall message to the gang?
I think Season 4 was smooth. Like obviously we nailed a bunch of guys for cheating, which I think was everyone could see it coming, and there was definitely a lot of people that knew what was going on and
wow.
never came forward.
How did I forget about that one?
Yeah. So I definitely think that we definitely put an end to a lot of people that were cheating. Obviously, I'm not naive. It's probably more that we don't know and a lot of other stuff that's going on. But that being said, we definitely put a pretty hard stamp into what was going on. It's kind of funny, too, because some of the people that have been pretty upset about the no management listing seem to think it's a valid argument to throw in my face that we gave, I think it was J Claw's ownership to start the season and then ended up removing him 3 weeks later. It's like, but what they don't realize is when he was given ownership, we did know that he was a cheater. So if we knew that, he wouldn't have been given ownership. But anyways, some people like to justify their own misfortunes with stupid shit. So, but yeah, I think that we were able to address those issues as best as possible. I know like the staff put a lot of work into that, man. Like especially Sloshy at that NHL level, he really did his homework. He was really sure about the decisions that he's made. It's unfortunate. I haven't talked to him at all or heard from him at all, and no one probably has. But it's unfortunate to see some of the casualties of this that were innocent. Obviously, Cummings, the owner of Vancouver, is one that comes to mind. I've always really liked him. He's been part of the leagues I've been part of for a very long time. He was thinking about becoming staff here when we first started up the PlayStation League, and he had a big hand in getting us to where we are. So it's unfortunate to see one of those second tag issues be a player on his roster that he didn't know about, which led to ultimately him deciding to leave the league. So it is unfortunate to see that side of second tagging and stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that overall things were handled the best they possibly could be handled, and the season itself went smooth. Obviously, there was that ridiculous forfeit issue in the playoffs that was addressed, but we potentially may see rule changes so that doesn't happen again. And at the end of the day, I think that Season 5 is going to be good. Summer seasons tend to be pretty chill, pretty laid back. We don't, Triz goes on vacation. We don't make many changes. We kind of let things roll, and summer season tends to be fun. The people that play are people that usually want to play because it's it's family time and it's busy and it's summertime. So we usually see the people that are most dedicated here for the summer. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what Season 5 has to bring for the PlayStation side. The biggest thing I could probably spread and talk about is obviously there's been a lot of like debates and stuff going on in the chat box, and obviously that kind of spiked the reason why I wanted to sit down with you and have a talk. But I'm not in the chat box on Xbox either. I just that's your guys' space, that's your guys' time. Every time I'm in there and I find someone doing something stupid, I obviously have an obligation to act and handle it. I'd rather just like leave that as your guys' personal space. But if there are things that come up and people have questions, like I get 50 or 60 PMs a day and I answer 50 or 60 PMs a day. People hit me up on Skype. I answer those almost as soon as I can. I'm pretty good at getting back to people as soon as I can when it comes to messages. I kind of have a little bit of a pet peeve where I get a message and I have to answer it regardless of what I'm doing. So if you have questions, by all means, the door is always open. And I'd rather get 300 PMs a day than than hear about upset people in the chat box that are just don't understand how the rules are. And they're pissed off about something when realistically they don't really see it from the way I see it. And a short conversation between the two of us would lead to them not being so angry. So I do recommend that whether you're a player, a manager, an owner, whoever you are, feel free to always send me a message and question a decision, or just give some feedback, give some suggestions, whatever it may be. The door is always open for those people for sure.
And to the audience, we try and do these shows every so often when season's ending, perhaps, or starting up again. you can always, obviously you can send questions to Brody as well, but yeah, you can always send them to me, TSibs88. I'm more than happy to make a collection of some of the bigger items, some of the thoughts and ideas you folks may have as far as the league is concerned. And that's always a good place to start for us when we do these shows, to try and answer the questions that you guys have about the league. So feel free to message me at LG for TSibs88. Hit that address up on the LG site, and we could definitely compile some questions, and this way we can have Brody on as long as we need to get them answered. So it's up to you folks to get involved, and we'll do this again sometime soon. We'll definitely do another show before 18 comes out, but we'll do one at that point as well. So we'll have a couple more shows coming up before the next release. And again, Brody, thanks for your time. I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you soon about some of the things coming down the road.
For sure, man. Really appreciate your time, and this is always fun. So, thanks.
Brody McDonald, the commissioner for LG, and someone who likes to hear from the audience, and we'll do more of these shows down the road. Ask LG. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and we will talk to you again soon. Season 5 is coming up. Get signed up and get ready to play another one.